In 1987, Canon Films produced a live-action movie based on the He-Man toy line. The movie was easily the best made by the studio, produced at the heyday of their success. It's also a childhood favorite of mine, and so you can imagine that I've really looked forward to reviewing the movie. Before I get to the story, the setting of the film needs to be cleared up a bit. Just like all other He-Man media, it's set on Eternia, but the film streamlines the mythos of the franchise somewhat. There's no King Randor or Queen Marlena, no Battle Cat, and He-Man is never Prince Adam. So the film doesn't follow any pre-existing He-Man media specifically, and instead creates its own continuity. But that's all fine because there's a lot of familiar elements to the story. Let's get to the plot. At the start of the film, Skeletor's armies have managed to take over Castle Grayskull. The sorceress has been taken captive, and as Skeletor waits for Moonrise, when the powers of Grayskull will be transferred to him, he's also draining the sorceress's power. He-Man, Teela, and Duncan are still free and manage to rescue a Thenorian locksmith called Gwildor. Gwildor is an inventor who created the Cosmic Key, which can open a doorway to anywhere. It turns out that Gwildor's key helped Skeletor take over Castle Grayskull when Evil Lyn stole it from Gwildor, but he still has a functional prototype. The heroes sneak into Grayskull in order to use the key to free the sorceress from her force field, but they become cornered by Skeletor's men. Gwildor opens a gateway at random to help them escape, and of course, the heroes wind up on Earth. Gwildor loses the key upon the heroes' escape, and they split up in order to find it. The key is found by two teenagers, Kevin and Julie. Julie is about to move away after the death of her parents, and Kevin, her boyfriend, is a keyboardist in his high school band. Kevin activates the key, thinking it's an instrument. Skeletor tracks it down, and pretty soon his henchmen are wreaking havoc trying to get the key back. After a lot of crazy shit happens, He-Man surrenders to Skeletor in order to have his friends spared. Skeletor destroys the other key, and zaps Julie with a disease that slowly kills her. The heroes nearly resign to their fate, but Kevin helps Gwildor to create another cosmic key. The heroes are transported back to Eternia just as Skeletor has gotten Grayskull's power. A battle ensues, He-Man reclaims his sword, and we finally get the epic battle between He-Man and Skeletor I always wanted to see. Now, it shouldn't really be any surprise that the movie is partly set on Earth to lower the film's expenses, but the fact that the film was made by a small studio doesn't really show anywhere in the film, which I've always found very impressive. Everything from the costumes to the sets, special effects, and stunt work has been done brilliantly, and the movie flows well, with both a lot of action and a lot of comedy. And that's really the way I think a He-Man movie should be. The film also feels surprisingly grounded and serious, and that's another reason why I think it holds up so well. The film has a rich feeling to it, with the Eternians having their own technology and units of measurement. One of my favorite scenes is when Gwildor steals some fast food, and the heroes realize what Earth food is really like.
I wonder why they put the food on these little white sticks.
Those are rib bones.
You mean this used to be an animal?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a barbaric world.
I always found this scene funny because on the Filmation show, the heroes really ate their way in giant chicken legs. It's little things like this that help the film create a believable mythos around it. Now, let's talk about the characters, and I'll start with the obvious ones. He-Man is played by Swedish action star, karate champ, chemistry major, and film director Dolph Lundgren. In my view, he was the perfect fit for the role, not just from a physical aspect, but also because unlike Stallone or Schwarzenegger, he doesn't have a silly accent or way of speaking. What I'm really impressed with is that Dolph plays the role serious and never makes it seem like it's just a joke to him. Sure, he yucks it up when the other characters do, but I think it helps his heroic persona. On the other hand, he also doesn't crack silly jokes the same way John Irwin did, and this might make him seem a little less memorable as a character. Then again, I give Lundgren massive props, since he had to do all the stunts in the movie himself because Canon Films couldn't find a stuntman who could match his physique. For me, Lundgren is He-Man, and he even gets to deliver the franchise catchphrase in the scene where he reclaims his sword from Skeletor. Speaking of Skeletor, he's played by the absolutely awesome Frank Langella. Again, due to special effects limitations of the day, Langella had to wear a mask, but it's really great at showing off his facial expressions as well as making him look like a living skeleton. What I especially love is his menacing voice, and he really owns the part.
After all this time, Grayskull
is ours.
No! Mine. Find them! Trace them! I want them in the key hunted out and brought to me!
His costume, when he receives the powers of Grayskull, is a little over the top, but I didn't mind that much because he still kicks a lot of ass. Langella is easily my second favorite Skeletor after Alan Oppenheimer from the Filmation show, and just like Lundgren, he plays the role with conviction. Now, the human characters could have easily been the film's weak point, but actually Julie and Kevin are pretty decent characters. Julie's backstory makes her very likable, and Kevin, of course, proves his worth when he helps Gwildor with the key.
That's it! That's it! How did you do that?
Then there's Lubeck, played by James Tolkien, better known as Principal Strickland from the Back to the Future movies. As Lubeck, he's a tough-as-nails cop who investigates Julie's disappearance when Skeletor's men burn down the school gym. He's just as funny and short-tempered as in the Back to the Future movies, but what I love is when he loses his cool with He-Man and company. At the finale, he even gets to help out in the final battle.
Hey! Nobody takes pot shots at Lubeck!
As for other original He-Man characters, there isn't much to say. Teela and Duncan were cast well, but they never play a huge role in the film. Man-at-Arms is at least pretty funny with his war stories, and adds a little bit of comedic relief. The Sorceress also doesn't get to do much, but then again, she is trapped for much of the film. However, on the bad guys' side, we have Evil Lyn and Beastman in huge roles. Beastman's been simplified a bit into pretty much a brainless grunt, but he looks appropriate, and I just appreciated that he was there. Evil Lyn, however, plays a significant supporting role to Skeletor, advising him, and she even seems to have a bit of a romance going with him, a first for the character. She also gets to use her signature power of transformation when she imitates Julie's dead mother at one point.
Thank you, my darling.
Meg Foster did a fantastic job in the part. Skeletor's other henchmen are also fairly memorable. There's Karg, who's a weird troll creature who barks out orders to Skeletor's soldiers. He doesn't do much, but his voice alone makes him very memorable.
Find the key! Tear this place apart!
Blade is probably the coolest of the henchmen, and it's even implied that he and He-Man have some history together. Also, when He-Man gets captured, he gets to use a laser whip on him, which is pretty awesome. Sarad is a weird reptile man, but we never see much of him because Skeletor just up and kills him when his lackeys first fail to recover the key. The character who steals the show in the film, though, is Gwildor. With no Orko in the film, they obviously needed someone for comic relief, and luckily they chose the utterly lovable and goofy Billy Barty.
I don't like adventures.
Gwildor just gets all the funny lines in the film, and he's really the most memorable of the heroes.
What a hideous cry. Maybe I can communicate with the poor creature. Native transportation! Look! Native clothing! If we dress like this, no one will recognize us.
What the hell is that?
See?
But he's also extremely wise, and I love the scenes of him and Kevin bonding over their love of music.
Now, what are you trying to do?
The universe is music, Kevin.
Overall, Masters of the Universe still holds up really well, and it's just a super fun movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, and I think it stands as an example of how you should approach toyline-based movies. And that's all from me for now. Next time, we'll have a look at He-Man's animated revival in the early 90s. Until then, I have the power, so can you.